Hello and welcome. My name is Christina from Empowered Creator. I am a mindset and conscious manifesting teacher and coach, and this is my YouTube channel. Here I talk about all things law of assumption, mindset, conscious manifesting, the quantum universe, and a lot more. And my goal is to simplify everything without the fluff. So if you guys like this content and you would like to see more of it, I would love it if you would subscribe to this channel, comment on this video, like it, share it, and stick around. Also, if you need help with your specific situation, I offer one-on-one coaching, email coaching, small group coaching, as well as custom subliminals for whatever needs you may have. So if you're interested in any of these services, the links are below in the description box. Click on them and they're going to take you to my website. With all that being said, let's dive into today's video. In today's video, I thought I would share my personal story of how I manifested meeting my husband many years ago, also how he unknowingly manifested me, and also how I overcame the challenge of infertility and went on to have a healthy full-term pregnancy to who is now a 7-year-old boy. I know many of you have asked me to share my personal story with you, so here it is. I'm sharing parts of it with you guys today. So this is what I'll be discussing in today's video. Stay tuned. So the point of sharing these parts of my personal story with you guys today is to demonstrate the power of assumption. Because looking back, I very much employed all the principles of the law of assumption. At the time, I didn't know law of assumption, I only knew law of attraction. But looking back, everything came to pass, everything went so smoothly, everything manifested so beautifully through my own assumptions. So I'm hoping that sharing these parts of my personal story with you guys today is going to inspire you and empower you to start trusting the power of your assumptions. So let's start with how I manifested meeting my husband. I was in my early 20s, I was still living in Greece, and I had decided I wanted to go to London to do a master's degree. So I was also going through the process of applying to master's degrees in London at the same time. But around that time, I was in a relationship with someone in Greece, and it had been a long-term relationship. It had been over 2 years, it was about 2.5 years. And that relationship had kind of crumbled because my then boyfriend had been really opposed to us having a long distance relationship. So on the one hand, I was very heartbroken about that experience, about that breakup. On the other hand, I also really wanted the desire and the experience of going to London, doing a master's degree there, and hopefully also staying for work, either in London or elsewhere in Europe. So I distinctly remember one day as I was thinking about that relationship that had just broken down and I was feeling kind of heartbroken, I was feeling kind of low and kind of down. I remember just simply looking outside the window, looking at the sky and setting the intention that I don't want to be heartbroken anymore. The next guy I'm going to be romantically involved with is going to be the guy I marry. I set that intention, I said it only once. I kind of forgot about it, although it was a general intention in general. It was a desire I had anyway. And I had kind of assumed already, I was living in that assumption that when I would go to London, I would also meet the man I was going to marry. So I just had that conviction in myself. I had that assumption in myself. I had that inner knowing, as I like to call it, that I was going to meet my husband in London. So what ended up happening was I ended up getting accepted in a bunch of master's programs. I chose the one that was my first choice. And then that school, that university, had an online message board to encourage students to get to know each other before we would get to know each other in person. So my husband and I ended up meeting in that message board because he had also been accepted in the same school, same department, slightly different program. The message board was hosted by the department that we both belonged in. And so through the message board, we started talking. And I remember thinking to myself, reading what he was writing in the message board, oh, this guy and I seem very compatible. I feel like we would be very compatible with each other. Well, we kept talking through that message board, not just the two of us, obviously, many people. And somehow he probably felt the same way because at some point he private messaged me. And from that point on, we continued our communication through private messages, later through emails, later we had some phone calls as well. And so when we finally met in London, we were already friends. We already had started developing feelings for each other. And the rest, as they say, is history. The interesting thing is, because I had set that intention and I was living in that assumption that I'm going to go to London and I'm going to meet my husband there, my then boyfriend, who later became my husband, he was showing up from day one, very serious, very committed, wanting to be exclusive with me. And looking back now, I am convinced that this was because of my assumption that I'm going to go to London and I'm going to meet my husband there. And that other intention that I set that one day where I said, the next guy I get romantically involved with is going to be the guy I marry. So he was 100% my manifestation. Now, the interesting part was that I was also his manifestation, even though he didn't know at the time. See, it took us a while to even exchange pictures because at the time, it was the very, very early days of social media. I believe it was the first year or second year that Facebook was around. Not many people knew about it. And so he and I had been communicating for a little while through private messages, through emails and all that, without even knowing how the other person looked like. So we had already been talking for several weeks before we even exchanged pictures. And the interesting part is, my husband told me later that when he saw my picture, he went, this is the type of girl that I want. Because what he had always had in mind, he always had a mental list in his mind of what kind of girl and what type of girl he would want. And he wanted someone who is a brunette. He wanted someone who has kind of curly hair. He wanted essentially someone with my characteristics. So somehow he also had that desire. He kept thinking that to himself, I want a girl who looks like this and this and this, and who's cute and who's nice and who's this and who's that. And he told me that I completely fulfilled that list that he had on his mind. So as much as I manifested my husband, he also manifested me. And the other interesting part about how we met and how we got together and how we became a couple and eventually we got married was the bridge of incidents that actually brought us together to be fellow classmates in that same year. Because my husband is a year older than me, so he had graduated from his bachelor's degree in the United States because he's American, he's born and raised in the US. He had graduated a year before me. So what he had been trying to do during that 1 year where I was still in my last year of university over in Greece and he was here in the States, he had been working on getting into the US Air Force. And he made it pretty far through the process. He made it almost to the final stages to the process. And then unfortunately, because there were very, very few places for the type of job that he wanted to do, he got rejected. And that rejection came after he had invested something like 8 or 9 months in the process. So then at that point, obviously he was very disappointed, but he was faced with a dilemma. Do I invest another 8, 9 months, a year of my life trying to do that again, trying to get into the Air Force again, or do I do something different? He decided that the best course of action for him would be to go for a master's degree. So he did his research, he found out that master's degrees in the UK are actually 1 year versus 2 years in the US. And he decided, you know what? I'm going to apply for a master's degree in the UK. I'm going to make an adventure of it. I'm going to spend a year away from home in Europe and just make the most of it and enjoy my time away. So because he was delayed a year through his failed application to the US Air Force, and because I was also a year behind anyway, because I'm a year younger, so for me, it was my last year at my Greek university for my bachelor's degree, we ended up at the same academic year in London, and that's how we got to meet. So the rest of the story is that we dated for a while, we were pretty serious from the beginning, we ended up living together pretty early on, and then within about 3 years of our relationship, we ended up getting married. Eventually we moved to the United States together, and when we were ready, we started trying for a baby. We wanted to start a family. So what happened then was that we were hit with infertility. We were trying month after month, month after month, month after month, and there was no pregnancy. I wasn't getting pregnant. And that continued for a whole year and a half. Month after month, no pregnancy. Eventually, we went to a fertility specialist. We did the whole workup, which, for those of you who might know, it's a lot of blood work, it's a lot of ultrasounds, it's also invasive tests. They look at this, they look at that, they look at everything. It's quite a stressful process. And the result of that was for me to be told that I had what they called premature ovarian failure. So what that meant in medical terms was that even though I was quite young, I was still only 29 or so, or 30, something like that, my ovaries were supposedly much more depleted of eggs than they should have been at the age I was at. So even though I was something like 29 or so, I had the ovaries of a 36, 37-year-old, meaning the number and the quality of eggs was diminished. That's what I was told in medical terms. I was also told that I should have IVF, in vitro fertilization, because I wouldn't be able to get pregnant naturally, in that doctor's words. Or to be more exact, she said that my possibility was just 1%, if that. Obviously, that got me really upset, but at the same time, something very interesting happened. I started thinking that there should be no reason why I should not be able to have a natural pregnancy. I started believing in myself that I had no problem, that I would be able to have a natural pregnancy, that I wasn't going to need IVF. And by the way, I'm not against IVF. I just didn't want to go through that process myself with all the hormones that they give you. If I could avoid it, I'd rather avoid it. So I really wanted that natural pregnancy, and I started believing and assuming that I was going to have it and that there was no reason why I couldn't have it. So essentially what I did there was I didn't accept the 3D as it was given to me, and I dwelled in my own reality. I dwelled in my own desired story. So to make a long story short, what ended up happening through many bridges of events was that I started believing in my body's ability to produce a natural pregnancy. And through some very interesting bridges, I met an acupuncturist and herbal specialist who was really instrumental in getting my hormones back on track. And after I met that acupuncturist and herbal specialist, I was completely convinced that that was it. I was going to get pregnant. I had no doubt in my mind. And within less than 2 months of meeting that person and started seeing him and going to his practice, I was pregnant. And again, the rest, as they say, is history. I had my son in September of 2015. He's 7 years old now. He's going to be 8 in September. And I never looked back. I never thought I had fertility problems again. I still don't think I have any fertility problems. I'm 38 now. I still think I'm perfectly fertile. And it's just that after I had my son, I had my hands so full, I decided, you know what? I'm happy with one and done. So again, and I made the story quite short, there were a lot of bridges and a lot of incidents in between, but let me tell you, it was all based on my assumption. Once I started assuming that I wasn't going to have a problem, I was going to have my natural pregnancy, there was no reason why my body couldn't have a natural pregnancy, there was no reason why I couldn't conceive naturally, there was no reason why I couldn't carry to term, things started happening to confirm all of these assumptions. And the world and the 3D confirmed everything just the way I had been assuming it. So I hope these parts of my personal story inspire you and empower you guys to start trusting the power of your assumptions. And believe me, you too can shape your life the way you want it to be. With all that being said, I'm going to wrap up this video here. I intend that this has helped. As always, I very much appreciate you guys being on this channel, watching this content. I love making this content for you. And as always, I look forward to seeing you all at the next video. Until then, take care and bye-bye.